Radhika?
Good evening, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this insightful session under Grow Your Practice webinar series organized by the Committee of Members in Practice of ICAI. Today's session is centered on a topic of immense importance and relevance: Digital Personal Data Protection, DPDP Act for 2023, and capacity building initiatives of CMP. As chartered accountants, it is imperative that we stay ahead of the regulatory changes and equip ourselves to guide our clients and organizations effectively in navigating the evolving compliance landscape. The DPDP Act marks a significant step towards safeguarding digital privacy and personal data, and understanding its nuances will be crucial for all our professional growths. I am Sia Radhika Gupta, and I have the honor of moderating today's session. I look forward to engaging with all of you as well as delve deeper into this important subject. First, I would like to welcome CA Madhukar Hirgange sir, Chairman CMP ICI.
Hello,
Sir
how are
is
you?
a seasoned professional with 37 years. Hello, sir. Sir is a seasoned professional with 37 years of post-qualification experience. As a founder of HNA and Company LLP, he has built a value-driven firm with a national presence. A passionate advocate for professional development, Madhukar sir has co-authored 37 books and served multiple terms on Central Council of ICI. Sir, we are honored to have you with us today. Will you share your introductions, welcome speech, sir, please?
Thank you, Radhika. That was short and sweet. CMP is a committee which can have tremendous impact on all the chartered accountants, and especially those who are finding that they are losing their traditional practice. The compliance function slowly seems to be getting out of hand, especially the lower level compliance functions. There are higher level, lot of compliance functions possible. And I think today CA Swati will take us through a possibility of what more is possible in the new emerging areas. Also, one aspect which is very important, I don't know how we as professionals have missed, is that there are many areas of pain for the industry. For example, if we look at the MSMEs, they have so many areas of pain. Pain could be in getting land allotted. Pain could be to get subsidies which have been offered by state governments. Pain could be to get pollution control clearances. Pain could be anywhere, depending on the client. For example, in the real estate industry, what are the challenges? The challenges in real estate industry is that 90% of the players, whether developers or contractors, are uneducated, unorganized, unable to get good advice from professionals. So why are we not there? This question we have tried to address now through the CMP committee to provide a suite of training to chartered accountants who will then network with a few experts and be able to provide one-stop solution to the real estate unorganized, uneducated industry. Remember, this industry is 9% of the GDP of India. And if 90% is there, that's a large community waiting to be served. The next is MSME. If you look at MSME also, there have so many challenges. So if we look at all their challenges, we understand all their challenges, we may find it is pretty easy if we learn a few things. Here, however, there may be a little more need to study in depth because each state has different benefits, and even each state may be focusing more on certain industries. So there is a lot of work to be done for opening up opportunities in non-traditional areas of practice. One aspect which I have come to the ICAI for the third term is to enhance the basic values and basic attitudes of all the students and members in our profession. I think while we are focused on knowledge and skilling, we have missed out values and attitudes. These are areas which we would be looking at. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Over to Radhika.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wise words. I would now like to introduce C. Satish Kumar Gupta, sir, Vice Chairman, CMP ICI, who is here with us today. Sir has co-founded Gagan Company, specializing in tax litigation. Sir is also an LLB graduate. With over 3 decades of experience, he is known for his integrity and leadership in the profession. Currently serving as Vice Chairman and Central Council member of ICI, he is dedicated to driving meaningful reforms in taxation and professional standards. Sir, we would like you to give a welcome address, please.
Thank you, Radhika. Thanks a lot. Worthy Chairman of the CMP Committee of ICI 25-26 or 25-29, I can say. My elder brother, Madhukar Hire Gange ji, a dynamic leader. And dynamism comes not only from the knowledge, it comes from the history, it comes from the passion, it comes from your dedication or devotion to the work. So I respect and love Madhukar Hire Gange ji a lot because of his working style and the workaholic he is. Swati Badaya ji, speaker of that day, and wonderful topics he has taken, Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2024, and Radhika Gupta, very young and dynamic professional, and my dear listeners, members who have joined this webinar in a large number, just to know about Digital Personal Data Protection Act, what act this is, and what are the opportunities for the chartered accountant through this act. And friends, in CMP, this year, under the dynamic leadership of Madhukar sir, we are going towards something very new, something very exotic, I can say, and all the members will find this year that there is a change in their professional life, professional career, just by way of adopting the initiative of the CMP committee. If I talk about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2024, friends, this act came India very late. It came into 2023, and I think whether Swati, it has been notified? No, still it has not been notified, but it is better to know about the provisions of the act well before, so we can be prepared. Sir, it came because of the decision of Supreme Court in the case of Puttu Swami, where Supreme Court held that privacy should be recognized, and it is fundamental right of any person and an individual. So thereafter, Government of India came with this act, sir. But it has still not been notified. After notification, definitely it is going to be a far-reaching consequences. You know, the provision of penalty, friends, in this particular act is up to rupee 250 crore. So this is a very big penalty this act has in its law, sir. And data, friends, data is the, I think, lifeline of the day, lifeline for the chartered accountant, for all the persons, all the industries, all the businesses. And oh, sir, in 2024, my dear friends, 402.714 million terabyte data were generated. Just if you would like to calculate it, the figure will not come. 402.74 million terabyte data were generated in 2024. And the need of the act is because 16.8 billion data were compromised in 2023. And this number is increasing day by day. And the importance of data, sir, I can just tell you one thing, that even if the bank wants to close its branches, so which branches should be closed can be got by applying the data science, sir. So data has a very big role in today's world even to take a smaller decision or a big decision. So data is very important nowadays. And for chartered accountants, it is really wonderful. I think we all chartered accountants should go through the provisions of the Digital Personal Data Protection DPDP Act 2024. And it can be a very good milestone for our profession, because in through this act, we can act as an advisor, we can act as an auditor of the data, and we can also give some certificates of the usage of data and breaches of data. And we can help the small and medium enterprises that how they should deal with the data, how they can utilize the data for their businesses, how can they save their funds, their life by using data in a very legal way. So this is something which I wanted to tell. One thing which I would like to tell, since I am professional of income tax, I am dealing with the litigation. So recently in the Income Tax Bill 2025, the Government of India has brought a definition of virtual digital space. This is again related with the data, sir. Now, when the income tax department go for searches or go for the surveys, they can intrude on the my social media accounts, my email accounts, my cloud account. So anywhere, if I don't give them the key of all those things or password of those things, they can intrude, they can do whatever they do in the physical. When they break up the law, they can break my all the locks of these data. So this has become very important to know about the data, to know about to learn about the data, and how to practicize the data as a chartered accountant. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, Swati, Badayaji, for you also, just to share your thoughts, your knowledge with our members. And members, you should take care that by adopting these new acts, we can add new milestones into our practice. For I remember, sir, when RERA came, we professionals did not adopt the RERA as a practice tool, as a practice word. And whoever adopted this RERA as a practice tool or practice word, they are on the newer heights in their profession. So like this, I would suggest that kindly adopt Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2024 into your practice area. I hope and I wish that you will get success. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Chairman, sir, and thank you, committee, Alok Bhai and others, Priyanshu, for wonderful webinar. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Over
Thank
to
you so
Radhika.
much, Satish, sir, for sharing your valuable insights. Thank you, sir. Let me now introduce our distinguished speaker for the session, P.A. Swati Bharaya ma'am. Swati ma'am is a senior partner at Rajiv and Associates, where she leads engagements in company law, GST, TDS compliance, RERA matters, and consultancy for e-commerce businesses. She's a certified expert in forensic accounting and fraud detection and a recognized data privacy specialist. She's also an active speaker on DPDP Act 2023, regularly addressing ICI seminars and webinars on the subject. We are truly fortunate to have her with us to share her insights today. I would also like to thank CA Tarunjot Singh Sir Nanda Sir, President ICI, and CA Prasanna Kumar Sir, Vice President ICI, for this opportunity. Over to you, Swati ma'am.
Thank you, Radhika, for introducing me, and I'm thankful to Madhukar sir and Satish sir for giving me opportunity to speak on this platform, and CMP committee also for giving me opportunity. And I welcome all the members who are the part of this webinar. I hope you must all be first thought that came into your mind that whether this act has anything to do with our chartered accountants. So my answer is yes, but my yes is divided into two opinions. One, you have to fulfill your obligation, and the second is the opportunity. This act is opening up a new domain of practice and advisory into it. I think we are always the happiest community whenever the government comes up with some new kind of legislation. So this is again an opportunity for us, and this time it is the digital framework. It is the government has given a framework to protect the data and govern the privacy. In a framework to govern the privacy. Let me share my PPT. I think it's visible. I think it's visible.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay. Now coming to the act. The act is the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. See, the name itself contains the whole crux of this act. I'll take the name slowly. It is Digital Personal Data Protection Act. So it is about protection of data, and which data? The data which is digital in nature, and whose data? The data which is personal. So this act is about protection of the personal data which is digital is in nature, and the mechanism under this legislature has been provided as how to protect the data, who shall protect the data, where this will be protected and preserved, who shall process the data, what happen if there is breach of provisions, who will be monitoring the provisions, who will be levying the penalties in compliances, all has been prescribed in law. So for the first time in a country like India, a legislation to protect the data and to govern the data privacy has come. It is one of its own kind. When I'm saying it is one of its own kind means it is a new opportunity. On one side, I see it as a problem as what to do, I have to do in my office, how I have to comply with it, and how I have to make sure that my clients comply with it. And but the other side, the positive side that I look is the opportunity. It is a big opportunity, but it's just we have to act proactive in this. Now the next slide. Next one. Now the thing is that what is the need of this act? See, we are listening these days, the data is a new oil, it is a gold, and really it is. The data governs a lot of these things. Even we see AI, AI works on data only, it's working on data hoarding. And Indian data is considered as a best data in the world because it's diversity, it's number, anything, but it's a best data. And we need such kind of regulation for ourselves. And why data privacy? Let's take our example that we face in day-to-day life. We, as in chartered accountants, regularly get 2-3 calls for securing unsecured loans or professional loans. I hope all will you agree. And they come from so genuine numbers that we have left with no option other than picking up the phone because it can be our prospective clients. So, and when you contact the bank, say, no, we were not the person who were calling you. So how this data moves? So here this legislation comes very interestingly. Now let's take one more example. Suppose I am planning an holiday. So I just Google it that these are the places and I Google on something. So soon after that, I'll see that my Google or my Insta or Facebook, they are loaded with the relative ad of either of a hotels or the agents, airlines and whatever they are overloaded with these such type of ad. So what is happening is that these companies, on the basis of my digital data, they are sending me the relevant advertisements to my respective IDs. I think all of you are familiar with this. Even sometimes it is seen that even we talk about, we get that advertisement. They are getting the digital data is getting tracked so fastly. So here this law comes interestingly. These companies are making money on this digital data only. And these Meta and Insta ads are much, they are very costly than these TV ads. And even they just charge on click basis, whether or not it converts into the sale or not, it doesn't matter. So DPDP Act, in short, if I say, is the first protection act to establish a framework for processing of personal data in India. and it aligns with its global data practices. Obviously, in 137 countries, they already have this data protection law, and it is aligning. Like Europe has its GDPR, China has PLI, and even California has CCPLA. So these are some prominent in almost Brazil, Africa. Many countries are governed by them, and an interesting thing, when the UK started with GDPR, it changed the way of doing business in Europe. So similarly, when this act will be operational, it will have a massive impact in Indian business industry. So this is I think this is the need of I have explained why this act is needed in India. Now I'm giving the disclaimer. I may be taking some examples and names and pattern and using the presentation, but they are for academic purpose and has nothing to do real in apparent connection or context there. So let's make this topic some interesting. I'm making it interactive. I'm just throwing some questions on you. Do you think whether DPDP Act applies on our audit working papers? Let's take example. When you register for this webinar, right? The committee of the members have seek to ask some information from you, right? Is this committee and will be under the scope of DPDP Act? One more question. When the Radhika has introduced this Radhika ma'am has introduced me and the sir. So are the information she has revealed, is that under DPDP Act? So the lot of scenarios will be covered, and we'll gradually be covering these scenarios. Now, coming to this act, why this act? Satish sir has told that there was a case of Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India in 2017, where Supreme Court held that right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. That means every citizen has a right on its own data and its usage. So to implement this, the Sri Krishna Committee was formed, and they give a report on this privacy bills and recommendation. And then 3 versions of bill were formed, but finally in 2023 only, the Digital Personal Data Act came into, got Parliament assent, or the President's assent on 11th August. See, on 11th August 2023, it gets the President assent, and it was expected that the rules will come by end of 2023. But it took almost 1.5 years, that is 2025 in January, the rules came. Because this act will impact all the businesses, and it is a significant impact. So basically the government is not, they cannot take the setback of the industry. They have to mix with this innovation with the business shall not be hampered. So it is taking so much time, and its compliance will also be given time. It in GDPR's 2-year time was given for the compliance to the industries to get in compliant with this law. And let's see how much time, our government will be giving. So the next is purpose of this act. See, this the basic pillar is, this is for processing of digital personal data, where right of individuals can be protected, and the processing has to be done for a lawful purpose. About this act, this is a very small act. Rules are notified, but itself it is a very small act with just 9 chapters and 44 sections. And it's mentioned that the various provisions of this act shall come in force from different dates that will be notified. The act is law of land, but it is not yet operational. And the draft DPDP rules, they came in 2025 in January, and they were open for public consultation till 5th March. And the rules were notified. It is expected that this law will become operational, and we are expecting it about the monsoon session. These will get notified. So in 1 or 2 months, we are expecting this law become operational. Now, what is the current situation of data protection in India? I would like to tell you that. To an extent, it has been into the Information Technology Act and SPDI rules, the sensitive protection data rules. It has to be regulated to some extent, but not completely. So we have this a whole different legislation of its own kind. And for the first time, the lawmakers have used the word connotation she, her. Otherwise, in all the acts, we always see he, his, him. This time, there is a paradigm shift, and they have used the word she, her. They have connoted like that. Now, next. Again, some questions that will make some interactive. Just imagine the PAN login, whether you will see whether we can answer it throughout this session. These are the questions that we'll try to solve. As our CA, I'm looking it for as a more so that we can we apply this act on ourselves, then we can go for a client. PAN, see this whether DPDP Act applies to the following cases. PAN, login information of clients obtained by CA during the course of the engagement. Third-party information of the client, such as external confirmation that we take. Information in minute books, working papers and audit reports. Email IDs, phone number that is saved in the database of any entity. Employment contracts, biometric attendance. See, these all are personal data. So we'll slowly and gradually see what is the impact of DPDP Act on this. Now let's coming to the act. The first is the data. Let's understand the data. It says it is a representation of information, facts, concepts, opinions. I have highlighted the opinions because I think audit report is an opinion. So audit report is also a data. See, or instructions in a manner suitable for communication, interpretation, or processing by human beings or by automated means. See, these days AI is churning out so much data. So this data definition covers the data which is generated by automated means also. Now coming next to personal data. Personal data means any data about an individual. See, the word is an individual. This act applies only on individual data. We have to keep it in mind. If it is company's data, firm's data, no consideration, no. If it is individual data, then only this act will apply. Now let me say again, a personal data is a data, means any data about an individual who is identifiable by or in relation with such data. Now, I have seen Income Tax Information Technology Act had some exhaustive list of data, but this act is not given as what is personal data. So I have just jotted down some which I feel it like email address, home address of an individual, bank account number, IP address, credit card number, cookie ID number, date of birth, Aadhaar number, password, photo, passport number, location ID, phone number. These can be a type of personal data. Vehicle registration number. This is one interesting thing I would like to tell. We have just done that Google 360-degree map, right? When we turn to the street view, we see the homes and the cars, right? Whenever you see that the car number, they are always masked. What happened in Europe? Obviously the Google is aligned, have to follow the GDPR. So a person, by seeing the vehicle registration number, they reach to the person and to sell the insurance. So the Google was fined, and they had masked this vehicle registration number. So it is up to that stringent level this act is applicable. And it is saying that the personal data is a data about individual who is identifiable by or in relation to such data. It is a vast definition. Suppose I'm blogging, I'm blogging and I say I'm at the tallest actor of the Bollywood. Now, I think everybody can identify, right? So this is also personal information, that is Amitabh Bachchan. So identifiable by, so the scope has been extended. Now, the third pillar, the third word of digital personal data. This act applies to the personal data which is digital in nature. Suppose I take the PAN number of my client. This is in a hard copy. It is not digital. I just take a camera shot, it becomes digital. So that act will apply. just imagine, like when I go to some commercial GST offices or somewhere, I have to write my details and all that. If it is in physical form, you're out of the act. But if it is taken in a electronic form, that you are in the act. And in our offices, we always use scanned documents. We scan the documents and share it on WhatsApp and email. So all these will come under the digital personal data. I hope the digital personal data is clear. Now the next. So we have discussed the data. We have discussed that non-personal data, which is below, this act is not applicable, right? And for the personal data, if it belongs to the individual, this act is applicable. So, but there are two stances. If this data is for the personal or domestic purposes, suppose I am hiring a driver and I take his driving license. So in that case, it is for domestic purpose. So you are out of this act. Or I am hiring a cook, I am taking his Aadhaar card. It's one and the same thing. So you are out of this net. Or if the data is made publicly available by the data principle itself. Suppose I am a blogger and I write on my social media, or I upload a YouTube video giving my credentials. So I have made myself my data publicly available. So this act will not apply to me. Or if it is under any law. Let's take the example of GST. These days during GST drive, it is mandatory to display the GSTN number outside the premises of our office. And GSTN number contains PAN numbers. So it is under some law. So again, you are out of this act. So you're out of the act of the definition. Now, okay, let's take one question. If any participants can answer, Radhika, let me know. Mr. X obtained responses for external confirmations from various MSME vendors, right? And the above responses has PAN, office address, SIN, GSTN, contact information, bankers detail of such MSME vendors. Now, these MSME vendors comprise of body corporates, partnership firms, and individual proprietors. Now, the question is whether DPDP Act is applies here. Radhika, please let me know if there's any answer, like if
Yes,
so see, we have just seen that it applies only to the individuals. So the body corporates and partnership firm, all the data that is related to body corporates and partnership firms is out of the purview, and the individual proprietors, on that, the information related to individual proprietor, for that DPDP Act will be applicable. Now coming to applicability of this act, I think now digital personal data is very clear. And if it is not, then you are out. If it is not digital personal data, then you are out of the act. You are not falling in the purview. And if it is yes, then there are two conditions, whether it is processing in India or it is outside India. If it is processing in India, then yes, you are covered under the act. And if it is processing outside the India, but it is processing for offering in goods and services to data principle of India, then yes, you are in the scope of this act. Let's take an example. I want to have a magazine, I want to subscribe a magazine which is published in USA. So I have to give my credentials to that publication house before making the payment. So it is related to the services or to the data principle in India. So that publication house, the DPDP Act is applicable on that publication house. Now, I think mostly we subscribe the OneDrive and this Google Drive. So this act will be applicable to Microsoft and Google also, so as they are processing the digital data of PIN. So one thing is very surely certain here, that we should be not under the misconception that the act applies only in Indian territory. This act can be extended beyond to the Indian territory, but there is a condition that it should be for offering in goods and services to the data principle in India. Just taking one more example, suppose I'm traveling abroad and I just book a hotel. when I am using the platform of not in India, foreign platform. So in that case, on that hotel booking, they won't be applying DPDT. This act will not be applied because it is not for offering that good and services in India, because I'll be using that hotel outside India. So in that case, it will be out of the purview of DPDP Act. So you know what? This Indian data from this till this act was a game changer, because if we were like an open chest, all the foreign entities can easily use our data with our citizens' data. Now, other nations who are dealing with Indian data have to comply with our law, and there is a regulatory body for this. Now, next. Now coming to the definition of processing. See, it is a very wide definition. You just touch the data and you're processing it. It's such a wide. I'm reading it. Processing in relation to personal data means wholly or partly automated operations or set of operations performed on digital personal data and includes operations such as collection, recording, organizing, storage. Imagine storage. If even in your storage, you are storing, you are processing it. Adaptation, retrieval, alignment, combination, transportation, restriction, destruction, erasure. It is, you just touch the data. Anything you do with the data, you are doing the processing. So audit, it is 100% processing. You are doing bank, or you're going to the bank and doing concurrent audit. Again, it is processing. Even storage, we are storing the client's data. It is again processing. So it is a huge definition. Now let's discuss a scenario. Today, like when the program was organized, I was asked to share my photograph and my brief profile. Now what happened? I shared this information to the committee members, and then they shared this information to the moderator. In this trail of sharing took place, I like to ask some few questions. When I share this information to committee, whether it is personal data, I think yes, because Swati Badaya is an individual and I think it is a personal data. Now, the second question, when I share this information, whether it is digital personal data, yes, because I share it in electronic form. The third trail that goes is that the information which I shared with the committee, whether this information was publicly available. No, it was not publicly available. Now, what happened when this committee is sharing this information to the moderator? Now, the question is whether this onward sharing is processing. We have seen the definition is too wide. Yes, it is processing. Now, having understood personal data, digital personal data, and processing, now just tell whatever information shared with moderator isn't it with contravention with DPDP Act? Yes, it is. The answer to this question, if this act is applicable whenever in times to come, this act is applicable, in times to come, they have to take consent from me to share this information onwards. So here processing is taking place, which includes sharing. But the committee never told me that they'll be sharing this information further. So that's why, see, in this small scenario, just in a webinar, there are so many implications of this. So a CA can play a pivotal role in drafting DPDP policies, its internal control and SOPs. So there is a lot of opportunity in this. This is a small example of a webinar. So every day in day-to-day life, you can just imagine what kind of opportunities this act is giving to us. These are the three pillars of this act, 3 persons in this act. You can understand. The one is data principle. Okay. It says the individual to whom the personal data relates. My voter ID. So I am the data principal for that. Okay. And where individual is a child or a person with disability, parents or lawful guardian. Now coming to the data fiduciary. See, data principal is an individual. This is very clear. Data fiduciary is any person Persons means income tax definition is that HUF, um, company, firm, BOI, AI, artificial judicial person. Just take an example. I want to go to the darshan to Tirupati Balaji. Now there they have for a booking, they take the Aadhaar card. So the Tirupati Balaji Mandir is a data fiduciary and it is liable. This is the artificial judicial person and they are under the ambit of this DPDP Act to the extent they are taking the Aadhaar card of the data of an individual. See, so it has all the persons and plus state is also covered over here in data fiduciary. What is this definition is very interesting. Say that any person or a state, it's clear, who alone or in conjunction with other persons determines the purpose and means of processing of personal data. He is the person who is determining the purpose and means. First, take the data processor definition, then I'll give 2-3 examples so it will be clear. Now, the data processor is a person who processes the personal data on behalf of data fiduciary. So let's take an example. I'm filing the ITR of a individual, right? Of a person, X, suppose. So X is a data principal and I am the data fiduciary because I am deciding the means and purpose. And I'm not filing directly on the income tax side. I am using some software, obviously, some interface. So that is the processor for the let's take one more example. Suppose I am getting for a bank for a credit card or debit card. I have applied a bank. So the bank is a data fiduciary. He's taking my credentials. I am data principal for the card. And the bank in turn getting it printed from some from a printing agency. So that is a processor. It is acting on behalf of the fiduciary on the bank. See, here the main point is that the whole onus, the whole thing, the whole obligation is on the data fiduciary. Even if there is a data breach on processor side, still the data fiduciary is liable. So there is again lot of opportunity for getting the data processor's due diligence and of its security of its audits. And we'll discuss it more later. Let's take one more example. Suppose I want some information and I give the members to fill the Google form, right? So the persons who are giving me information are data principal and I am fiduciary and the Google is the data processor in this case. So I think the 3 definitions are clear. Now coming to the next, I think we have covered the digital personal data and its processing and the 3 data, what are data principal, what is fiduciary and what is processor. Now coming to the grounds of processing, it says that the processing should be for lawful purpose. What does it mean? It means that it should not be expressly forbidden by the law. And there are the 2 conditions. First, you have to take consent from the data principal before processing the data. Or if you are using for certain legitimate use, then you can use it. So let's go ahead with the notice and consent. What the law says that first the data fiduciary has to take consent from the data principal by giving the notice to the data principal. When the data principal will give consent, then only you can process the data. So this is the consent. The consent has to be free, specific, subgivens are given. And for that consent, we have to first accompany with a notice to the data principal. Let's take this example. Suppose Mr. Y is a statutory auditor of ABC Limited. He has used the expert opinion given by Mr. X, an actuary for expected employee benefit obligations of ABC in terms of Ind AS 19. Can Mr. Y mention in his audit report that he has used the opinion given by Mr. X on arriving with his own audit opinion for financial statements of ABC? I think this law has a lot to do with CS, so I have taken this example. The simple question is this: can audit report, in the audit report, name of expert can be mentioned by the auditor? So let us analyze the thing one by one, whether opinion given by Mr. Whether given opinion by Mr. X is a data. Yes, it is a data. Is it a personal data? Yes, it is an individual opinion. So it is a personal data. Obviously, if it would have been Messrs. X, it would out of the clutches of DPDP because it is not an individual. It would not have been an individual data. Now, this actually opinion, maybe this has been given in the hard copy, but at the time of filing of IOC, we would have converted it into the digital. So it is a digital personal data. This is clear, and it is processing also because the processing has a large definition. Now the audit report of Y is also a data. Yes, because an individual can only be the signatory to the audit report. So here the question is that before mentioning the name of the expert, it is under the DPDP Act, and it is in contravention with DPDP Act if the prior notice has to be given to the expert. This is expert, and his consent should be taken before writing his name in the audit report. So we auditors need to be very cautious when we obtain any expert opinion. If that expert is an individual and he is giving an opinion which I'll be using in my audit report, the DPDP Act will be applicable for that. Now, the notice, it says that basically the draft rule said that it should be in the cleaner and plain language, and it should tell the itemized description of personal data, and it should also mention that the specified purpose and what all services will be offering, and it should give a communication link. So if how to excise a right, if how to withdraw the consent, and how to make complaint to the board, and what is the right of grievance redressal. Let's take one or two examples understanding this notice. Suppose I go to a bank and I open a bank account by using a mobile app or a website. For that, for doing the KYC, the bank says for me to do a video-based customer identification process that they do. Now, before that, the bank, why? They have to take my consent by giving me the notice that, see, this is all the data we need, and for the purpose, they have to tell me the purpose and all the data needed. Then when I'll give the consent, then only they can do my KYC through this. Similarly, there is one more thing in this. This option to exercise a notice should be given in either in English language or any language which is given in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. There are 20 languages prescribed over here. Basically, so that it can be given in regional languages, so the purpose of the act can be solved. That's why this is given, that it should be given in the regional language that is understandable to the data principle. Now, the biggest opportunity is here. See, what this says, the similar notice should also be provided as a reasonable practice. It says that a similar notice should also, as soon as reasonable practice, be provided to the data principle when consent was obtained before the commencement of the act. See, this is giving the retrospective effect. Is a type of that. See, the e-commerce operator, the banks, the real estate owners, the schools, the hospitals, the hotels, the CA firms, everybody has been processing the data. And the act is saying that you have to give a notice, a transitional consent notice to all those persons whose data you are processing. See, it is a big opportunity. We can just imagine that everybody is holding the data. So drafting this transitional consent notice itself a big work for a chartered accountants. Let's take an example. Suppose X is an individual who gave her consent for processing her personal data for an online shopping app website operated by Y. Before the commencement of Act, I think everybody is on e-commerce side. There are so many things on. They have so many apps everybody has stored in their mobile, and they have given permission. So they have to take all the whoever is having data, they have to take the transition consent. Now, this says that as soon as practicable, either through email or in-app notification, or other effective method, the e-commerce operator has to take the permission of that individual by giving notice. So it is a big opportunity for a chartered accountant. Now it says that the consent should be free, specific, informed. It shouldn't be unconditional, no condition should be there. It should be unambiguous with clear affirmative actions and signify an agreement. The first thing is it should be specific. It should be limited only to such personal data that is needed. Like, so let's take an example. Suppose I download a telemedicine app. The telemedicine asks for processing my personal data to make available the telemedicine services. Now, if that app is asking for my phone contact list, even if I give her consent, but under this act, it cannot ask for that data that is not needed for the purpose. Suppose the calendar app is asking for your contact list. So this won't be happen unless and until the data which is required for processing, only that can be taken. Imagine the food app is asking for a photo gallery. So these won't work. After this act will come into force, only that much data will be taken that is needed for that activity. Let's take example of our own branch. Suppose there's an X branch of ICIE and it prepared a Google form for organizing a seminar. Now, various fields are to be filled by the members, which include the following: name, designation, job or practice or general, whatever, age, annual income, marital status, membership number. Now, this X branch stated in the form that the above information will be required for processing the registration for the seminar. Now, what is the view about the data sought by the X branch? In my view, the branch cannot ask for annual income, marital status, because other thing, I think it is needed. Age is also needed for CPR requirement, but other things are not needed. So the bank doesn't require these two things. The branch doesn't require these two. So we have to see again the role of the chartered accountant will come. So we have to draft these policies and these SOPs and these we can be an advisory to this, because what the purposes serve, we have to see everything. Yes, we were on this slide. So it says that it should be it should be limited to the only that much personal data should be collected that is needed for that activity. Now it says that consent should be by clear and affirmative action. No silence and pre-tick boxes will do. And it should be there should be no hidden privacy policy, and the consent must be genuine, free of choice, free. Usually when we download any app, we have a habit of allow and accept all, but after this act, only that much information can be asked that is needed. Now, it says that the consent should be invalid if any infringement of the provision itself, if the notice contains some infringement of the act. Suppose, like in the examples, a person buys an individual insurance policy using his mobile app, where he's giving consent for processing her personal data, and he's waiving his right to file complaint with Data Protection Board. So the second part of waiving her right is infringement. So this part of the consent will be invalid, and he can complain to the board. Now, withdrawal of the consent. It says that the data principal has right to withdraw the consent anytime, and it should be similar ease as it was given. It should not be like that while getting the consent, you are just getting one click away, and for withdrawing, you are making me go here and there. It should be similar ease. It should not be like a Chakravyuh. And it says, very important, that upon withdrawal, the data processor need to cease the processing of data within reasonable time. And if the consent is given for the processing of data before its withdrawal, that has to be solved by. That has to be solved by. See, I'm giving with the example. Suppose I'm an online, I'm an individual and I'm a user of an online shopping app or website operated by Y, and I consent to processing of personal data for supply of some order, and I made the payment for it, and later I withdraw the consent. So for the order which I have made the payment and I have placed the order before withdrawing my consent, that has to be processed. That website has to give me that order. Similarly, let's take an example. I'm taking in there are email service providers. Like I entered into an agreement with telecom service providers for emailing my bills ills. So the telecom service provider has a third service provider, outsources this to another company. Now, if as a customer, I say that I'll download the mobile app and I say, just stop emailing me. So the telecom service provider and the data processor who is emailing this bill, they have to cease processing my data. Let's take one more example. Suppose I am using the Ola service for booking the cab, right? It is sending OTP through telecommunication provider, right? Now the Ola has a third party company which in turn send its data, it's to Airtel or Jio or whatever it is. And then they send SMS. So there are the three parties connected over there. So when I withdraw the consent, so it's Ola's responsibility to delete my data on all the three platforms, the third party, Ola, and the telecommunication provider. However, if under the TRAI, it regulates something that you have to keep data for some years, then it's a different scenario. Otherwise, it is the responsibility of the data fiduciary to to erase my data from all the platforms. So this is a far-reaching effect. Now, again, a question I would like to ask. This is RST and Company is a CA firm, and it is engaged in ITR of various companies and individuals. It has information like SIN, GSTN number, PAN, DSC, token, user ID, passwords, and all. Whether DPDT applies to the CA firm, and if yes, to what possible extent? Let's analyze it one by one. The DPDP Act is applicable on personal data. So only up to the data related to individuals, this act will be applicable. RST and Company, whether it is an individual or a firm, it doesn't matter because the data fiduciary is all the persons are covered. So only the data related to individuals, for that, the DPDP Act applies to a CA firm. Again, our question. Suppose you went for outstation for staying in ABC Hotel. The hotel took voter ID from you and a scanned copy of same, and it was capped and duly mapped the same to your booking room details. Whether Act applies to this? Yes, the voter ID is a data. It's a personal data. Scanned copy is again digital personal data and stored its processing. So yes, the DPDP Act applies on the hotel, and it has to comply with all the provisions of this act. Let's take our own example that we have our websites, and it collects and processes the data through cookies. So whether DPDP Act applies here? Yes, the DPDP Act applies here. See, we have to be very cautious about this. We have to give the option of manage the cookies so that the consent can be taken as what type of, whether you want to take functional cookies, target cookies. So we have to be very cautious while getting the cookie information. And because the DPDP Act is also applicable on this, because we have to take consent before it is like a notice, and we have to take consent before collecting any data through cookies. The government has imposed, we are seeing that all over world, the governments are prohibiting the social media. They are making regulations for the children's for social media presence. Similarly, something like has been done by this government through this act. It says that while processing of the data of children and personnel with disability, you have to obtain a verifiable parental consent for child and the person who is with disability. See, like suppose my son, he is watching something, suppose my son, he is using the phone and the data is being collected. The fact that I am his parent should be verified by some verification mechanism, and then my consent is taken so that my son can continue to watch the phone or to use that app. Largely, it will affect the gaming industry and social media industry. See, and it is also written in the act that you cannot do the processing which is detrimental to the effect on well-being of the children, and no tracking, behavior monitoring, or targeted advertisement should be done. However, the government has exempted to at one or two places for some purpose that it is prescribed or where central government is satisfied that it is done in a manner that it is verifiably safe. The government may specify some age. See, the rules have come and they have given some verifiable mechanism, although the rules are just draft because they will be, once they'll be notified, they'll come into force. It just says that some technical and organizational measures are to be taken for verifying the consent, and it says that due diligence has to be taken for checking that the individual who is identifying herself as a parent, as a parent by the reliable details of identity, that is with fiduciary, or the voluntary, that the details are provided to the fiduciary or through virtual tokens mapped or through DigiLocker services. They have to come out with some mechanism so that they can verify that yes, this is the parental concern. Now they have given some exceptions also to educational institutions, clinical establishments, health establishment, and healthcare professionals. Now, see, now please take note of my words. To process the data for these legitimate users, the data fiduciary need not to obtain the consent of data principal. Now, what are these legitimate users? We have seen in earlier slides that there are two instances where the data can be processed. One is from where is this consent is coming, and other for the legitimate users. So now coming to the legitimate users, what are the legitimate users? It says that if a person voluntarily provides the data by the data principal and she indicates that does not consent, suppose I go to a shop and I say, please just message me the bill. I'm providing you the telephone number to message me the bill. So I'm voluntarily providing the data and I'm not saying does not consent to use my personal data. So in that case, the data fiduciary can process the data without that notice issue, and that consent is not needed. Second big is for the purpose of employment. It is a big thing because the employer has to take all the credentials of the employee for even from saving itself from the loss or liability. So that has been excluded. And obviously for the material of public interest, medical emergency, and all these CCTV camera and these all are installed in the public places. I think that for the and for ensure safety during disaster or breakdown of public order, or where it is processing or by some state or any of its instrumentalities. In that case, it is saying that it is a legitimate use. There are some examples. Suppose I have taken first example. Suppose second example, I just message, I am an individual, I just message a real estate broker that I need a suitable rented accommodation. I share the personal data. And so the Y may process my information and intimate when the accommodation is available. Subsequently, if I say that, yes, I have done, now you erase my data. So the person has to cease processing my data. Similarly, for government benefits, suppose a pregnant woman enroll herself on the app and to avail the maternity program. So the government may process her data for determining that whether she's eligible for other prescribed benefit or also. So it is for the government. State has given a lot of scope for this for this act. There's a very liberal. They have given a lot of exemptions throughout the act. Because it is right for its functionality. The functionality includes a wide things. Consent manager. I think consent is a strong ground of processing in this act. So we need some mechanism to ensure that consent is meaningful to everyone. See, we are serving the diverse personnel with different educational backgrounds, speaking different languages. So to solve the purpose of this act, the consent mechanism should be very good. It is the basic. See, even most of the educated people like us, we don't read the condition. We just say, I agree, I accept, isn't it? So here the term the consent manager comes. It is giving the power of controlling the personal identifiable information which you can entrust with it, and you control through it how your information is used, its whole lifestyle in terms also of erasing or deleting it. So the consent manager is a person. Now the rules has said that it is a body corporated in India, which will act as a single point of contact to enable the data principle to give, manage, review, withdraw through an accessible and interoperable platform. And he has to be accountable to data principle, and like the rule says that he has obligations of data as a data fiduciary also to an extent. Now I would like to just elaborate this consent manager. We have KYC intermediaries in stock market. Similarly, it is like where you just get KYC of one, then you get it done to all the intermediaries. So it's something like that. And we can relate it with the account aggregator in the financial background, where I think it is a regulated account aggregator. You must have listened. It is regulated by RBI. And it is a mutual consortium of Ministry of Finance, RBI, SEBI, and IDA. And they are financial information providers. They were there in financial information users. They are like providers are GST network, banks, mutual fund, asset management company. And these account aggregators are the banking company, non-banking company, and they act like a bridge between the financial information providers and users. So these financial information user, they can provide a better financial product, loans, and insurance for you. Basically, what happened? My all personal details, my mutual fund, shares, income tax, GST, turnover, all are with one. That is the account aggregator, and the loan, the financial information users like bank and on after taking my consent, they can see which all loans are going on or insurance policy which are going on, what better they can perform. They can manage their my portfolio. So it is like an account aggregator also, which is worked on the consent framework. They ask my consent that whether you are giving the consent, so they can go forward. So it is the consent plan. It is that only. Isn't it like recently the government has come with a PAR ID? What we have to do, we have to take our academic results and files from one place to another. Now with a PAR ID, you just give the consent, all your documents will be shared to the person. So you don't have to carry the document. Something like consent-based framework, that because everything is digitalized now, with the help of just consent, you can share the secure sharing of the data can be done. Now coming to this consent manager, I think it's clear. The draft rule says that it is a body corporate, which has to be registered and with the board, and should not have net worth less than 2 crores, and it should have a sufficient capacity for its operation, and their volume should be defined. And the obligations, we should see the obligations for it. Should have a platform, it should do the consent management, it should not subcontract, it has to be data blind. That's a big thing. And privacy and security should be there. The major thing is audits. Again, for us, this is an opportunity. The consent manager has to be get audited regularly. So this is again a new scope. See, now it has not been specified that who will be doing all these audits. There again, some opportunities will come, but still we can have a lot of opportunity in this. Coming to the next, significant data fiduciary. See, a bigger player have a larger impact as compared to a smaller player. That's why the word came significant data fiduciary. That means entities which are crunching huge volume of sensitive personal data, they are at more risk, isn't it? So the rights of data principle are more riskier over there than the normal data fiduciary. So here the word come the significant data fiduciary. In a country like India, where 83 crore people are on internet, and we are assuming that with 25-26, we'll be having 120 crore people on the internet. So there'll be so many significant data fiduciary. We can just imagine the opportunity. See, on the government has to notify that who will be the significant data fiduciary. But regarding volume and sensitivity, we see there will be many data, many say SDF in the India. Now, this is the best slide, I think, for us. See, what is the obligation of significant data fiduciary? They have to appoint a data protection officer. See, till now we were listening about a tax consultant also. Now you can be a consultant DPO also, data protection officer, consultant. It is a new term and we have to just explore this. They have to appoint an independent data auditor to carry data audit, who shall evaluate the compliance and all. They have to get it periodic audit yearly, and they have to do data in protection impact assessment that has to be done yearly for the purpose of processing the personal data assessment, management of risk of rights of data principle, covering all these things. See, we'll having a large number of data fiduciary seeing our population, and so the opportunity for all these works is with us only. It's just that how proactive we are starting this with this law. Now coming for the obligation of data fiduciary. See, this is the all we have studied. The data fiduciary has the data, so he has to comply with these. This is the whole act is giving this obligation on the data fiduciary, and in case of breach, he has to pay a hefty penalty. So let's see one by one what the lawmakers are expecting from the data fiduciary who is sitting on large data of the data principle. It says it should protect the personal data by taking a reasonable security safeguards to prevent the personal data breach. See, the DPDP rules mention what are reasonable security safeguards. Let's see that. It says that the data which is under its control has to be encrypted, access control should be there, logs should be maintained, regular backup should be taken, and they have to retain a log for 1 year and have a contractual obligation with a data processor. This is very important because the data fiduciary is only liable, and data fiduciary the data processor is not liable under this act. And they have to report the personal data breaches to Data Protection Board and Data Principal. The guideline says, these rules says that they have to immediately report to them, and after 72 hours, give a detailed report to DPB. It says you have to abstain from processing the personal data that may cause harm to the children, or take behavioral monitoring or targeting advertisement. And they say you have to provide a clear and concise notice to the data principal. This again, making of notice, this is an opportunity for us. They say that protect the personal data which is in possession with the data processor also, and delete and cause this data processor to erase as soon as the purpose is accomplished. Let's take an example. Suppose I'm an organization and I have a payroll service provider to whom I gave my employee name, bank account, and amount to be paid. The organization, that means I am determining the means and purpose of the data as what has to be done with this personal data, right? The payroll service provider is just following the did not what I am saying. It is what he's doing, what I am saying, right? So the law is putting onus on data fiduciaries. So therefore it is important to insulate ourselves better, not only to contractual perspective, but we should look at overall entire understanding with such data processor. How we'll do that? We should do the due diligence with respect to the entity. What is the cybersecurity coverage? How are they protecting the data? some kind of audit being done, we need to have a trusted partner in this case. See, we should say to provide regular, we ask, provide us with regular audit report, and in case of breach, inform. There has to be indemnity, all has to be baked in. And see, we can have if we are already in the contract, we can add addendum to the contract in respect of the security. See, even we are processing our data to the third parties, so we are using these softwares as an interface for the income tax and GST department. So first, let's start with us. We have to bake in this. We have to see this from. We have start from this end. Let's make let's do due diligence at our processors end. So we'll start with from our own firm itself. Now, there can be 2 or more data fiduciaries at the same time. So we have that opportunity also. Let's take, suppose I'm traveling and I'm giving my Aadhaar card and all to the travel agent, which it in turn is giving to the airline agent. So there are 2 data fiduciaries. So it is all subjective, and where it is a subjective thing, the role of a CA will come as who will determine how much will be the obligation of any person. This is about the data processors, and we should have there should be a valid contract with the data processor, and it says that you have to obtain a verifiable parental consent before processing the children's data, and it says that the data fiduciary has to publish the business contact information of a data protection officer who is able to answer the questions of the data fiduciary. These have covered. Now some exemptions. It says that these are the data fiduciary are not they are relaxed from some obligations in these cases if there is any legal right to claim, if it is by court or by tribunal or any body, it's some judicial in nature, if it's something like that, if it is under any law, the processing is under any law, or see, the processing is of personal data of data principles not within the country in pursuant to some contract. So they've given a kind of relaxation to the outsourcing industry. Now, in case if there is a processing in case of merger and amalgamation, processing where it is in the case of us, in the case of defaulter, where if I've gone to insolvency or something like that, where it is notified by the central government or for some research, statistical purpose, and some case of startups, they have given some exemptions. Now coming to the data principal rights. The data principal has a right to assess what is the personal data, what is processing is done. He has right to assess the information. He can correct his information. He can complete, update, erase, withdraw. He has a grievance redressal right. And an interesting right, he has a right to nominate. See, other laws doesn't have this. We are a step ahead. Because the deceased data is mostly misused for cyber crimes globally, whether in bank or in insurance company. Mostly cyber crimes are done with the deceased data. So we are a step ahead, and we have given this right to nominate. Now coming to the data principal duties, it says you have to comply with all applicable laws. I think there are so many laws in the India, it's next to impossible to comply. Even you jump a red light, then you are contravening this act. Now it says, it says you cannot impersonate another person. See, you cannot do you cannot impersonate, you cannot suppress material information, you cannot register false or frivolous grievances with Data Protection Board, and you can furnish only such information which is verifiably authentic. And in case of any non-compliance of duties, the data principal is also subject to penalty, and it can extend to 10,000 rupees. So here the data principal is also made accountable to give the right data to the fiduciary. Now, on a slight deviation from the topic, what we are doing these days, we are uploading a real-time locations, and we are putting the child certificate, which mention all the information on the social media. See, a trail can be formed and it can be misused. It is very important because the digital footprints of all the individuals have increased significantly. with our e-commerce, the shopping we do, the digital media, the food delivery app, the preferences and everything. They are leaving a footprint. With AI and algorithms, your name, your conduct, your behavior, your address, your choices on the internet all can be used not only for the good or the benefit of that platform, but it can also be misused. It can be used to deny you some service, to force you into some choices. So your footprints are very important. So everybody has to understand that the personal information that is on the internet, it is very important and it leaves a trail. You are leaving every time you are leaving your digital footprint. So we are listing the cases of the digital arrest. How these are based on the digital footprints that the person is leaving. And now the social engineering is not needed not needed for the cyber criminal. I just wrote one article today only. The social engineering doesn't need for the cyber crimes. You yourself are putting so much data in that, then the AI with all its algorithms and all, it is generating more information about you. I think your mobile knows more about you than your counterpart, isn't it? So we have to reduce our digital footprints, or we have to safely see. This is the only takeaway. Now, coming to the cross-border transfer of the data. See, the central government can restrict the transfer of personal data by the fiduciary to notified countries or territory outside the India. The transfer would be permitted to all the countries until any of them are blacklisted by the government. However, if there is any sector-specific law or for higher degree of protection, the restriction, that law will prevail. See, this is a very interesting thing. In some countries, there is a concept of data localization. Data sovereignty means your data cannot leave the boundaries of your country. In India, we don't have anything such. In spite, we have come with the prohibition. We have a negative list of countries that will be notified, not yet notified, where you cannot store the data. The reason is maybe we have a lack of data centers we don't have, and the cost of storing data is also high. So Indian regulators come up very smartly. It says whatever is critical from Indian point of view, say like RBI, SEBI, and all these data is to be in India. Otherwise, the rest of the data can be stored outside. Just imagine Russia's data is with Ukraine, and the Ukraine says that, see, your data is in my server and I'm stopping it. So it is happening. So there is a coming. So they are proposing to come with a negative list, and it happened with some countries. It's some companies that their data, all the financial data, got vanished. So recently, the India has come up with the Companies Amendment Rules 2022, which was effected from August 22, which says that books and papers maintained in electronic form must remain accessible in India all the times. And it is also saying that backup of is capped on daily basis and stored in India. See, during audit, if it is not done, then you have to qualify the report and say you have to write it's non-compliance. So it's clear that unless it is sector-specific regulations, you can store your data anywhere. The negative list of companies, it's still yet to come. Personal data breach. It says that any unauthorized processing of personal data or even accidental disclosure, acquisition, sharing, use, alteration, destruction, loss of access to personal data that compromises the confidentiality or integrity, CIE confidentiality, integrity, and availability CIE of personal data, then it says to the personal data breach. See, even accidental disclosure is included. Let's see first let's take our example of our own offices. While asking for every month, we ask for the GSTR1 data, isn't it? Now, there are two options. Either you mail individually to the client or you just do CC. See, the one way is you do CC and the other way is you do BCC. If you are doing BCC, it's okay. If you are doing CC to the client, that means you are sharing the email IDs with the other persons. So it is an unauthorized processing, or it's a sharing. So you are doing breach of this DPDP Act. And sometimes even imagine the client replies and reply to all, it sends data like that. So it can happen. So the unauthorized processing, this is unauthorized processing. So we have to be careful. It says even accidental disclosure also leads to personal breach, that is covered. And there's a huge responsibility on implementing systems to prevent accidental disclosure, and there is no exception even when a person is victim of cyber attack or hack. Even there is a cyber attack, then it's a data breach, then you are found guilty under this act. See, when there is the rule says then there is a personal data breach, you have to report to data principal also. You have to report to data protection board also. And in 72 hours, you have to give a detailed report to data protection board. And similarly, you have to report to certain in 6 hours. You have to report to SEBI also. And if you are by some act like by bank or something like that, you are under that act, then you have to inform also. So once you get data breach, a person needs business, they have to come, they have to notify. The one person is there who has to notify so many persons. Yes, there's some data breaches there. In 2023, there was an Aadhaar leak. Aadhaar was leaked. It was on sale on the dark web, and around 81.5 crores Indians, the Aadhaar details, passport number along with addresses and phone number, they were on sale for the dark web. And I just come across an advertisement these days where an insurance company is selling the data breach policy under the guidelines of DPDP Act. Now, the retention of personal data. It says that the data fiduciary must erase and cause its data processor to erase the personal data first upon withdrawal of the request. That means as soon as you get the request for withdrawal, you have to delete the data, or as soon as it's reasonable, since the specified purpose is no longer being served. Suppose or if it is under some law, then you have to retain it. There is no issue. Let's take an example. Suppose I register on myself X for selling my old car. Then after the sale is concluded, I say erase my data. So when I just give the withdrawal request at the same time, they have to delete my data. However, if I am closing the bank account and I then say just erase my data, so they will not erase because they are under the regulation of Banking Act where they have to keep it for some years. Now, this specified purpose is no longer being served. It has been defined that in case of e-commerce, gaming, and social media, if the last 3 years the data principal has not approached them, so then they can delete their data by informing the data principal 48 hours before. This is given the rules, draft rules. Now, Data Protection Board, it is set up to enforce the law and award penalties to the state government by the state government. Now, this is an act and it is an, first you have to exhaust all the opportunities with the data fiduciary, and if still you are aggrieved party, then you can go to the Data Protection Board, then TDSAT, and then to Supreme Court. However, there are alternate dispute resolution also. They have you can go through a mediator something, and there is voluntary undertaking also. Penalties. This is something which makes this act very important. The amount of penalties that is prescribed in the law make it very strong, similar to GDPR. Why GDPR is so much followed? Because of the amount of penalties. Similarly, our lawmakers have introduced a good amount of penalty over here. It says that if you don't take if the data fiduciary don't take reasonable security safeguards, then the penalty may extend to 250 crores. And if they do not notify the breach to board and data principal, or they do not fulfill the additional obligation for children, it may extend to 200 crores. For not fulfillment of obligation of significant data fiduciary, it can extend to 150 crores, and it may extend to 50 crore in case of any other breach of provisions. Now, see, it is the highest level. It is not every time you will touch the 250 crore. It is not every instant that you hit the highest number. The way it is drafted, that there are certain mechanisms to determine the penalty, like repetitiveness, its sensitivity, gain or loss, its gravity of the breach. There is no, and at the same time, there is no imprisonment provision. Or however, the monetary penalty is so much that it will definitely going to pinch the organization. And this penalty is at per instance. Every time you breach, you will be levied the penalty. And if you have breached it twice, so it will be aggregate, this penalty will be aggregated. And this all penalty amount is going to be credited to the Consolidated Fund of India. Now, before taking case study, I would like to share some insight. What we have to do, we have to do some data exercises within our organization. Let's start with this. What is the structured data? What is the unstructured data? How you're obtaining this personal data, where it is stored. First, we have to know the problem. See, what data we actually need. We have to work on that data minimization. Personal data will vary from organization to organization, and automobile dealer can have a different data than in hotel industry. So it depends on the nature of industry, what type of personal data and what, where and how it is collected. We have to decide a clear policy, what we require, the retention policy, how to obtain the consent. The data is very important. Even we have a habit of getting the data through other mechanisms. We should take it through email only. These data. Now let's see these some case study. Then let's see some this case study. It says that ABC and Associates is a CA firm that manages the database with client information and vendor data also. So as per DPDP Act was an implication of this. See, if we are a CA firm and we are managing the database of the client information and other things, so we have to very clearly give a notice to the client that see, this is all data we are processing and this all data we are doing, and we have to get the consent. If it is a new client, then a new notice, and if it is already existing, then we have to give a transition notice. Now let's take second. The CA firm manages the login data, credentials, different portal ID, login creation, KYC document, and digital signatures, all that. So we have to take reasonable security safeguards because we are data fiduciary and we have a larger obligation on us. So we have to take all the data. Let's see digital signatures. Let's talk about that. We generally see the digital signatures are kept in a box in CA's office, and imagine they are already in the encrypted form. But what we do is on its key itself, we just write the name, we just write the password, the key, the private key, the number. So it has defeated the purpose itself. The number should not be on that digital signature itself. It should be kept separately. First, you should not keep a digital signature of your client. And if you are keeping, you should not keep it like they, and it is kept anywhere in the open book. So anybody in their office can access it. So I think it is a very risky practice. We have to take reasonable security safeguards. Now, third is, suppose my company is engaged in third-party services for outsourcing and we share client data with associated partners. Yes, we have to enter through a valid contract. We have to see either both of our data fiduciary or one. Either we are processing data in conjunction with somebody or it's only us we are. So we have to indemnify ourselves. We have to insulate ourselves. We have to draft the agreement between such that two are data fiduciaries, one is data fiduciaries, we have to enter with a valid contract in that. Now, the fourth is that if a CA firms retain clients' data either under statutory obligation or discretionary purpose, so it goes like that. If it is a statutory obligation, you need not have to take consent, anything. You can keep it under this law. If you are keeping it for discretionary purpose, then you have to draft it in the notice that you have sent to the client to retain the data. It has to be there should be objective evidence of everything. Now, what should be the data? This is a very good question. Like, this is a very good question. The data management infrastructure in a chartered accountancy firm. This is everything all the chartered accountants, we should start following this. We have to work on data minimization. See, what is our habit to send all the, what we say, you just send all the data. Whatever we like, we'll be using, but we have a habit of getting all the data from the client. So from now, we should have a habit of taking only that much data that is needed for our purpose. Then shared storage, like what if we are using some software or that we are storing, suppose I am filing the ITR, so first I'm storing on that software. So that has to be secured, right? Third party software, isn't it that sometimes we use we use online PDF converter in our offices to convert in Excel file and Word file? That should not be done. We convert the bank statement into the Excel format by using the PDF. This is happening in the CEO offices, that's what I'm saying. So we have to come up from them, and other channels through which we are communicating with our clients, and sometimes inspired with it is done with the personal devices of our article clerk or assistants. We should come up with this practice, and obviously we have to take reasonable security safeguards for firewalls and all that has to be incorporated. Now, this is all from my side, and in conclusion, I will like to say that, see, this is a new era, and we are already seeing the traditional avenues of practice, how it is getting impacted. I think it makes sense that we start slowly into the consulting domain with these sorts of skills. It could probably start with a very simple exercise of collecting our clients' own data, but eventually, as we do uncover, it will become specialist opportunity. In a country like India, where the significant data fiduciaries are going to be large in number, it is just a question of time. We are able to pick up, pace up, and start moving forward. See, this is a journey, and we have to start it. Thank you. This was from my side. Radhika ma'am, if there is any question.
Yeah,
Let
so I
me
think
know.
there are a few questions. Uh, First one is, how will you differentiate data security and data privacy?
Relevant question, actually. See, there are just two different side of the coins. Let's take an example. Suppose I'm sending you my bank statements, and you are keeping it the most secure environment. It is in safeguard. Nobody can access or alter it. Confidentiality, integrity, availability is ensured. So this is a security perspective. And data privacy, the same thing. If I'm sharing with somebody, like I'm sharing it with somebody of a vendor to get giving access. So the data privacy is something is how the data is collected, how it is used and stored, and why it is collected. So there are two different coins, and the protection is a combination of both the data protection with the data security and data privacy.
Okay. We also have few more questions. Would you like to take them up? No. Can a data processor be a data fiduciary also?
Yes, they are a person can wear a different hat at the same time. It's like that. Suppose I go to the bank and I say open my bank account, then the bank is a data fiduciary and I'm the data principal. Right? I'm submitting KYC, the bank is a data fiduciary. At the same time, if I am eligible for some subsidiary scheme of the government, like I've enrolled everything with the subsidiary scheme, now direct benefit transfer is there. So in this case, the government is instructing the bank to just pay me. So in that case, the bank is the processor and the government is a fiduciary. So a person can wear different hats at the same time. He can be a data processor, he can be data principal, and he can be data fiduciary. It is in a different context.
What are the opportunities for chartered accountants under this act?
There are a lot of opportunities. See, let's start from the point of view of significant data fiduciary. You can be a data protection officer. You can do a audit. You can do a protection impact assessment. Then there is a notice requirement that is given to the data fiduciary to data principal. That you can draft. You can go for transitional notice. Then there is a provision of audit of consent manager. The due diligence of data processor is to be done. You can act as consultant of DPDP Act and DPO consultant also, and you can represent in front of board also, and you can make the policies, internal control, SOPs, and there's lot of opportunity. Once let this act be implemented, it is a very wide effect.
One of the participant is asking, can you please repeat in which employer needs to collect Aadhaar, whether consent is mandatory as per the Act?
Repeat the question.
Can you please repeat in which employer needs to collect Aadhaar, whether consent is mandatory as per Act? Whether
For
consent is mandatory as per Act
the
for
government
collecting Aadhaar.
has the government has specified certain legitimate uses where you don't need to get the consent. So employment, for the purpose of employment, is among one of the legitimate use. So if your employer is asking your credentials, then he need not have to give you the notice. It is a legitimate use under this act.
Okay. And also, what is the status of data protection in other countries?
See, till now, 137 countries have implemented data protection law. Even Brazil, Africa, the Europe is very going good with GDPRs. China has its own, the California has its own. So the countries are doing, they are mostly around 60 to 70% of they have covered with this act, with this data protection laws.
And what kind of additional qualification is required for chartered accountants to become data protection audit, to do data protection?
See, the rules are, not has yet been notified that who will be the DPO, who will be the data audit. It's still not notified. See, it will be almost 2 years, in 2-3 months the law came, but the rules came so late because it has a far-reaching impact on every business. So the government is they're taking the slow steps. There were elections also. So still not, it has not been told told in the notified that who will be the data auditor, what are the qualifications, and this not yet had been notified.
If there is a data breach, who has to be reported?
See, the lot of compliance burden is there in case of data breach. First, you have to report if it is a data breach, you have to go to data principal and say there is a data breach. You have to go to data protection board. You have to tell them. Then 72 hours again, you have to go to data protection board and tell the whole details that what measures you have come. And similarly, if it is a cyber attack, you have to go to certain and tell to them also. And you have to go to SEBI also. If you're registered in SEBI, you have to tell them also that yes, there is a data breach or there is cyber attack. And in addition, if you're a banking company or regulated by some law, then you have to tell them also. So there are a lot of a person needed to go so many places to just report that.
Clients, like a few of our clients' data is stored on Amazon Cloud Service. Who is data fiduciary?
See, till the we are using the we are storing the data of many clients on Amazon and that. So Amazon is a processor up to the hosting services it is hosting. However, for the credentials which we have given, for that it is a data fiduciary. We are the data fiduciary we are the data fiduciary for our client because we are handling its data. But Amazon is just a data processor for that. But however, if there is some update in my, I have registered it as a key customer and there is an update to notify to up to that update, it is a data fiduciary. But for the data that I have stored in the Amazon, for that hosting services, it is processor.
Next question is data sovereignty to be seen DPDP Act.
Yes, the data sovereignty say, like in Europe GDPR, they give the positive list of companies where they can store the data. See, The data cannot go beyond their geographical borders. In India also, we are expected to come soon with the negative list of the countries where we cannot send the data.
Anybody have any other questions? Kindly please send the questions in the question tab, because we have discussed all that was shared. Ma'am, can we close the session?
There are no more questions.
No more questions. So thank you so much, Sri Swati Bera ma'am, for your insightful and highly relevant session. Your clarity on DPDP Act and its practical implications have truly added value to all of us here. I would request firstly all participants to kindly fill feedback form, for which link is provided in your window. I would also like to thank all participants for joining us and engaging so positively. It's encouraging to see such enthusiasm for learning and growing together as professionals. We hope today's session has equipped you with a better understanding of evolving data protection landscape, inspired you the next step in your capacity building journey. On behalf of CMP and ICI, thank you once again. Wishing you all continued success in your professional endeavors. Stay informed, stay empowered. Have a great day ahead. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.